And joining me now is Jaya Jaitley, Indian Handmaids Crafts mentor and curator, activist, and author. After guiding design and marketing at Gujari for the Gujarat government for 11 years, she found Dastkari Haath Samiti. It's just celebrating its 35th year now, a national association for arts and crafts people to enable rural artisans to gain confidence in the marketplace through innovative strategies. For example, artistic crafts maps and organizing 15 and more international workshops to enable collaboration between Indian and global artisans. In 1994, Jayaji also created Dilli Haath, the iconic must-visit crafts marketplace on every tourist itinerary. And recently, in October 2019, for Google and the Ministry of Tourism, she led the development and launch of the largest exposition of craft stories online, titled Crafted in India. I can go on about the books authored by Jayaji. Do Google them up. Jayaji also writes stories for children and is an active mentor at Hand for Handmade Foundation. In her 4 decades of craft, she has also served on many advisory and policy-making bodies. Wish you a very happy New Year, Jayaji. So nice that you could join us here.
Thank you for inviting me. Keeps the day lively and active to engage even when one is stuck at home.
That's so true. It's a blessing, right? So, yeah. Our audience comprises of craft entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, as well as investors who are looking keenly at the handmade craft sector out of India and want to see many global brands emerge out of India, given our strong, foundations. We've got you've been seeing this for the last 4 decades, so your insights will be very valuable to the audience. I have a couple of questions, and should we get started?
Yeah, sure.
Great. So the first thing I would like you to perhaps share is how in the last few years, what do you think have been the key growth drivers for the handmade sector, both for India as well as globally?
When we first started after independence, it was looked at as a sector which had to be patronized very heavily by government. And so there was benefits for Khadi, more budget allocations and so on. But over time, I think the governments always preferred push of industrial growth. So these kind of sectors got a little neglected and were left on their own. Interestingly enough, in the early 90s, when globalization came, there were a lot of activists and many around me, perhaps me also for a short time. We thought, oh my gosh, here comes all the foreign goods and our craft sector is going to be wiped out. But a very interesting thing happened. And I think it was psychological to a large extent, which perhaps entrepreneurs don't think about. But the customer who saw similar brands everywhere across the world, in every mall, started looking for something different. Everybody wants change. You don't want to eat the same food every day. You don't want to wear the same t-shirt every day. In the same way, once I was on a TV program and the KFC person was there. And he said, it's so wonderful. We have 1,475 outlets all over the world where the chicken tastes absolutely the same. And I thought, oh my God, how terrible. We have 14,000 khadi outlets where the texture of the khadi is different in each one. And that's the beauty of it. And I think that really happened, that you didn't have to particularly look for the thing of that country that you were traveling to if you were going to buy the same Nike shoe in every store. So that was the time that I think people started looking for something that was unique, perhaps a little exotic, but different. And India had a huge advantage in that, which I think we didn't even realize. Because we felt that, it's just one of these little tourist souvenir type of things. But that was exactly the time when I felt that, look, we're opening up our markets to the foreign countries and foreign companies, the big multinationals. They are looking at our huge growth of our middle class who had purchasing power. Why are we not looking at our own middle class? If they are trying to sell our middle class at that time was the same population as the entire USA. So they had saturated their market with Coca-Cola, so now they had to come for new customers. So I said, if we are opening our markets for them, why can't we open markets for our craftspeople? And that was when I got the idea of Dilli Haat. And I'd been traveling in so many villages and so many small towns where you find so many of them are named after a heart, like Guwahati. Goa is actually the Supari. It used to be the selling place for, marketplace for Supari. So I realized that the Haat was actually a beautiful local Indian supermarket. You could get everything there. You could get your vegetables, you could get your knives, you could get your toys, you could get your fabrics. And that is what tribal hearts and village hearts are all about all over the country. So, and I said, they come for short times. Why don't they can't bring too much stuff because they don't have the capital and they don't have the storage space. And they come for a short time, few hours or a day in the week, just about the amount they can make. So that was the idea for the plan behind Dilli Haat, to rotate and to bring the craftspeople directly. That became a big idea. The government itself took it up as a policy of funding urban hearts in every state. Not all of them have worked like Dilli Haat, but they also started funding major trade fairs, and the craftspeople started being invited. So the craftspeople, in that purpose of ours of the Dastakari Haat Samiti, of giving confidence to the craftsperson in the marketplace, they started going all over the world, engaging with Chinese customers, French-speaking customers, and they managed, and they felt a sense of pride. So these kind of things happened. Then I started doing things like taking craftspeople to universities and schools to teach children. And I said, just imagine if they feel like teachers and not as if they don't know anything themselves, they're a lower rung of society. So all these kind of programs started being taken up by people at various levels. It wasn't just me. Some ideas like Dilli Haat, yeah, maybe it was me. And then the crafts maps, which you mentioned, was also a big effort, which is still appreciated, still in demand, because whether it was tourists or students, those times you couldn't afford coffee table books. And I thought for 150 rupees, anybody could buy a map and you'd get to know a little snippet about all the crafts in that state while you're traveling. So it was for tourists, students, and UNDP even used it as a place to identify where craftspeople needed rehabilitation after an earthquake or a drought or a flood. So all kinds of things like that came. At least I'm talking about my side of the contribution because you call me here. But I must say lots of people therefore did markets, we did our little exhibitions, big bazaars. And I still believe very strongly that that is the key to success in crafts. As I keep saying, our most recent experience in Pune was a bazaar of 85 people for about 8 days, where the turnover directly in the hands of the craftspeople was 2.7 crore. Now look at the potential of craft. So that is the eye contact with the human being. The whole beauty and the importance of the craft sector is to remind people that everything is not technology and robotification and artificial intelligence. We have to think of the human being. What's the point of all that if the human is not going to survive or being, struggling as migrant labor?
Yeah, and truly, it's not, it shouldn't be migrant labor. It should be, nurtured as this beautiful, precious,
yes, and
talent.
Important thing that I'd like to stress to your, for instance, investors, is that it is no longer a romanticized thing. It's not that it's just beautiful. All us women will get together and say, beautiful, but that doesn't affect men. We get affected through our emotions, and the men through their calculating brains, which need logic, which need columns to match. Nothing should go red. And they work in Excel sheets in a way in their minds. But the way we do it, when we have a bazaar without any thought, we know which craftspeople to call, how to help them improve their things, give them a good stall, encourage customers to see the new things that have come in. And it just clicks, and it clicks at a human level, which is really beautiful. But as I said, there's a very important aspect that's now coming up for which I think investors should look at.
Yeah.
And that is the fact that craftspeople are the least energy consuming of all production in society.
Sure.
Right from our Shilpa Shastras, we've been taught to honor nature. We've been taught that trees and water and the soil, everything is sacred. It's not a question of religion, but it's a question of understanding that we need nature for our survival. Climate change today is such a huge international, United Nations, this, that, and the other world conferences. And yet, no, I want people to recognize that the craftspeople, as our traditional farmers, they both use organic for saving the planet.
Yeah.
And the craftsperson wants renewable grasses, they want renewable organic material. They cannot use plastic, which they have to throw away. And they want clean water to wash the dyes better. They want expected climates to happen, not unusual time of flood and unusual times of drought.
Yeah.
Because then with the harvest goes the dyeing, the weaving, the planting of some grass, or the access to grass after a monsoon, the special grasses that go around water bodies.
Yeah.
All these things are used, and in every part of the country, craftspeople know how to use the local materials around them. And they work with that to make utility products. Everything about craft is not decoration and design.
Sure.
It's about bringing it into our life in a sustainable way. And a lot of these big companies love to use the word sustainable and green with some little component that's there to make it sound as if it's the new world and newly acceptable technologies. But if you go and look at the craftsperson, their technologies are least waste, most renewable, most recyclable. And if they are given importance in terms of their livelihoods and their production, a little bit of appropriate technology, a little bit of facility, sometimes all they want is electric connection and a good road. They don't want huge factories and lots of allocations. And then they need the chance to market. And when they come out and market on their own, they become confident, proud human beings who are equal to everyone else in society and not kind of made to feel humble in front of people who wear suits.
Yeah.
So
or can speak English for that matter. Yeah.
Exactly. And one project I did, which I'm very proud of, was when a karigar came to me and said, "Hum log anpad hai and gareeb hai. We are poor and we are uneducated." I said, "Look at how much you know with your hands. It's not that you need the computer. And why should you worry about English? Look at our languages. We have 22 official languages. Such beautiful scripts. Make a design out of the script." So we did a project called Akshara, crafting Indian scripts with 150 exquisite exhibit objects in textile art and craft, which was then shown and appreciated in Paris and Egypt and Singapore and Bombay and Delhi, of course. And karigars really started valuing their own language, their shlokas, their phrases, their little 2 sentences that Kabir would have sung, and they wove it into their shawls. And people like Prime Minister and everybody else started noticing all those things. And they suddenly felt, yes, they were literate. And to get to literacy, they could do it through their craft. They didn't have to go back to school. So I keep thinking of new things like this, which encompass everybody in different ways. And I think if our entrepreneurs and investors also think in on these new lines and connect many dots that exist in society, not push crafts into just a product that has to be sold.
Yeah. In fact, just to join the dots here, there are 2-3 very interesting, points here. The first is that our handmade crafts, talent can actually develop products that are completely, as per our contemporary lifestyle and drive the, there is a demand among millennials and Generation X and more to lead more sustainable lifestyles. And therefore, the handmade industry in India can actually be, and I'm quoting another friend in the industry. We can be the ethical, product factory for the world. So that's one. And the second thing you mentioned is that there is a lot of talk about sustainability, but this sector is born sustainable, and it's more about being able to attract the right talent as well as the right finance to ensure that they get all the additional support they need to become successful. So
there's one other thing I'd like to mention, because again, it's a question of entrepreneurs and ordering quantities.
Mhm.
When we talk now about slow fashion coming along.
That's
slow
right.
fashion at some talk or international conference or something on Zoom, which I was part of, I felt I had to remind everyone that slow fashion wearing also means slow production. Don't ask for huge quantities, because handmade cannot be.
Yeah.
A sari, if you want a handloom sari, you have to give them at least 6 days to make 3 on a loom.
Yeah.
And you need 3 to 6 people. And a power loom, if you don't like power loom, will get you 12 saris in one day with only one person working. So think of where your value systems lie, and why should you need thousands of meters of anything and get the Chinese way of going container load?
Yeah.
I think human beings, we are only one of a kind, each of us. And I think to have 500 or 1,000 pieces of anything, and then switch it and have different colors, different sizes. These options are the beauty of this sector. The variations each time you produce a batch is beautiful in this sector. And I think we have to recognize this variety in us as human beings.
And celebrate that, celebrate that individuality, and rather than go the scale, mass production way, because that's not what this is all about.
Right.
So great conversation. In your, you would have been thinking about this. What is the one or maybe more innovations that you would like to see in the sector that you haven't seen that could really help our crafts entrepreneurs become more profitable?
I think a putting together of all the points are actually mentioned, because innovation in design should now focus, for instance, on least use of energy, or efficient use of energy. Two, it would be, of course, a lot of people have done this, but not so much focus on elaboration of a design as such, but to make it utilitarian and competitive in terms of its longer value, as I said, of being a part of the climate change movement or something like that. And that sell it differently would be the point I'd like to make. Not the actual innovation as such, but rethink your way of presenting it.
It's creating that whole value proposition, or the what exactly are you buying? You're buying actually something beyond a product.
That's right.
You're buying into a whole value system.
I have a lot of corporates coming and advising me, why don't you think of branding and packaging? And I feel, my gosh, Indian crafts, every craftsperson makes it a little differently. What will be a brand? A brand is like a brand of ownership, like you brand a herd of cows because you own those cows. I don't think that's right. And packaging also, everyone extols the beauty of Japanese packaging, but all of it is thrown away and all of it goes waste.
Yeah.
We are great hoarders. And I think the Karigar from Bengal, I keep telling them, when you bring your saris to sell, bring the Bengali newspapers. Wrap your sari, roll it up in the Bengali newspaper, tie it with the jute string from Bengal, and present it as a piece of cloth fabric hand woven from Bengal. It'll be fun. And anyway, the newspaper is going to get thrown away. That doesn't matter. It would have in any case.
How wonderful. Yeah, this is...
So I feel like, innovations of a simple nature like this, which make you stay on track of the non-waste mindset.
Yeah, and authentic and totally, it's all very authentic, and that's what consumers of today really seek, right?
It doesn't have to be a shabby newspaper, which is all frayed at the edges, but you can upgrade it a little bit. But the idea of reuse and local and indigenous, identifying it from a particular area, all these factors get into that moment of sale.
Lovely. So, Jayaji, this conversation is very. We could just go on, but just conscious of your time. Also, I'd love to know. Our audience would love to know one wish you have for the industry, for the handmade industry, for 2022.
Well, I think I wish what everybody wishes, that we tend to see, we hope to see the end of this blessed virus and all its mutations, so that we could come out into the real world again and meet each other and greet each other as human beings, because the craftspeople need that the most. Somehow, you know, construction is going on because the migrant workers are there, but they immediately close markets. And I know that big traders make a noise. The craftspeople don't make a noise. They quietly go back home. And when we call them up, they say, "Hum ghar baith ke kaam kar rahe hain." They are all working. And during last year, they sent us pictures of paintings in which all the gods were wearing masks.
Oh.
What a beautiful message. Somebody else did, they painted masks. So we created mask production with about 21 different groups across the country who had never made masks before. And we did a 7 or 8 lakh sale. So it's innovating with the times, but I hope we can innovate in more successful ways and not have to struggle with the virus this year.
Yeah, and tathastu, and so it is. I have one more question for you, which is which basically came up from an earlier conversation right now. You did mention about markets closing down because of the virus, the pandemic, and things like that. How do you see online playing a role, as a substitute?
Very weak substitute. I'm not terribly popular with those who have websites, and I've also created one and hope to push it.
Okay.
But nothing like face-to-face contact, sale, feeling the cloth, feeling the, because the whole of craft is a story. It's a story of human beings and their enterprise and their endeavor.
So it's the energy in the human to human touch, the energy is what you're saying is really required. Yeah.
It is, and that is what helps it to survive at a lot, because as I repeat again, the 2.7 crore sale in 8 days, I would challenge any e-commerce site anywhere in the world to match that in handicraft.
Okay, so let's see how this evolves with the confluence of online and offline, both kind of supporting each other and both playing a role in the customer's journey. So
I'm not against technology, as my Google Arts project showed.
Yes.
So we took the material, we traveled all over, we got so much resource, and then we gave it to Google, who made such attractive technology out of it and such fun. Anyone can download that app.
Yes.
All crafted in India. And
yeah, it's a must see. It's great for everybody to have a look.
I just want to reassure everyone, I'm not an old-fashioned fuddy-duddy who doesn't like technology.
Not at all. So, Jayaji, it's been lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. Once again, wishing you a very happy 2022. And I'm hoping this is the start of a conversation, and we'll come back and have a chat about other important things for the sector that can help promote the growth of this sector.
Thank you. Thanks for the work you're doing too.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.